Hey dreamers, welcome to this cozy sanctuary for deep sleep. I've been crafting original, slow-living and cozy fantasy sleep stories for over 25 years and sharing them on YouTube since 2007. In that time, I'm proud to say that my bedtime stories have been listened to over 30 million times, helping countless people to find peace from worry and anxiety and to drift comfortably asleep. However, recently, original human-crafted content has been getting lost in the noise of all the AI sleep content, and I've been finding that the AI content is often pushed above human-made content. So I'd like to ask you a favor. It really helps the channel if you engage with the content in some way, whether that's liking, commenting, hyping or subscribing and sharing the content with others and choosing to watch more videos on the channel. So I'll do my best to help you sleep, and if you like this, it would mean the world to me if you can engage with it in some way. I love telling relaxing stories around a campfire. There's nothing better than getting cozy and drifting asleep to a gently crackling fire and the sounds of nature. So before you fall asleep, just take a moment to settle down by the campfire with me as I regale you with a calming tale. And before the tale, you can begin to calm your mind and body, allowing your eyes to close and allowing yourself to begin to relax. And as you begin to comfortably drift asleep, I don't know whether you'll drift asleep faster to the sound of my voice, or whether it'll be to the spaces between my words. And as you comfortably fall asleep, you can take a moment to get comfortable in your own way and imagine a healing light softly, slowly and gently passing down from the top of your head to the tips of your toes, relaxing gently down through you as I count from 10 down to 1. And with each count, your mind can quieten and calm as the muscles soften and relax. And you can begin the process of drifting peacefully asleep. From 10, that healing light relaxing the muscles around the top of the head, around the back of your head, gently, carefully relaxing the muscles around the side of your head, around your temple, your forehead. And with each out-breath, that relaxation can deepen so peacefully, so comfortably, as it flows down around the eyes and around the ears. 9. That relaxation moving down around the jaw, relaxing that jaw, allowing the tongue to relax, the lips to relax, the nostrils to gently relax. With that relaxation moving carefully, slowly, as that healing light passes down the back of the neck, softening and calming those muscles. around the side of the neck, the front of the neck, down from the head, gradually moving that calming, healing light out across the shoulders, the shoulder blades, relaxing those muscles like a deep massage passing through your mind and body. 8. As that relaxation begins to move down those arms, and I don't know which arm the relaxation will move down fastest, whether it'll be the right arm or the left arm, but you can be aware of that healing light spreading gently down those arms, around the biceps, triceps, down into the forearms. 7. Moving all the way down to the wrists, the palms of the hands, down to the fingertips, and perhaps as that relaxation continues through those arms with each out-breath, the arms begin to feel heavier or lighter or develop some other sensation as relaxation sets in. And you know the process for sleep is that the body begins to relax, and while the body becomes physically relaxed, so the mind begins to drift and dream, initially to brief reveries before settling on the first dream of the night. 6. And that healing light can spread down from the shoulders and down around the chest, the upper back, softening and relaxing those muscles, gently calming the breathing, helping you drift deeper and deeper into the experience. 5. The healing light, moving down towards the stomach, the lower back, the sides, relaxing those muscles as it goes, bringing a deep sense of peace and calm to your upper body, releasing any tension, perhaps occasionally finding yourself shifting just a little to get a little more comfortable. 4. With that relaxation spreading down around your buttocks, down into your upper parts of your legs. 3. Passing that relaxation down towards the lower part of your legs. Perhaps those legs feeling heavier and heavier. Maybe as the body becomes deeply relaxed and your focus drifts inside more on what's going on for you in your mind, you lose some awareness of the body as it becomes incredibly still. 2. The relaxation spreading down to your feet, calming, softly, relaxing, all the way down to the tips of your toes. And 1 as the final wave of relaxation pulses gently through you, from the top of your head, down through your body, all the way down to the tips of your toes as your mind begins to drift and dream and wander to the gentle sounds of nature around you, the soft crackling of the campfire, drifting with those sounds into tonight's sleep story. You can have a sense of walking through some woodland, and you're going out in search of some ruins of an ancient abbey, and you're walking through the woodland. You can hear your footsteps, that dull thud of each footstep. You can hear the rustling leaves of the trees and notice the way the light dances as it shines through those leaves. And you can hear birds. And as you continue walking, you can notice perhaps how it's darker in the woods, but you can see that at the end of this path you're following, as you walk through the woods, there's a light where it opens up to a valley. And so as you continue walking towards that light, you can begin to wonder what the ruins will be like. You've never visited these ruins before, and so you can wonder what they'll be like, because no two sets of ruins are the same. And then at the end of the woodland, you come out into a valley, and you can see grass hills either side of you, stretching off into the distance. You can see some plants, some shrubs. You can feel the air on your face and notice what the sky looks like and how any breeze moves the grass on the hills. As you walk down into the valley, and while you walk down into the valley, you can notice how each footstep changes, how the sound changes as the ground changes. And you can walk further down into the valley, searching for those ruins. And after some time, you can find some white stone ruins. And some of them are perhaps 2 to 3 times your height, of broken walls and archways, and other bits are just like rubble on the ground. And all of it has begun to be taken over by nature, with vines and plants growing up and out of the various bits of ruins. And some bits of the ruins you can almost walk into with some kind of substance, where they have high enough wall areas that make it give you a sense of the room and the space. And not many people come and visit this valley, and so not many people have come and seen these ruins. And you know these ruins are about 800 years old. And so you walk around and you walk into the entrance of the ruins and you start exploring. And you walk into what would have been the main large open space. And you explore in this large open space. And as you explore in this large open space, you can see some pews, and some have rotted away, and others you could still just about sit on. And so you take a moment to sit yourself down on the pews, and you start to have a feeling of what it would have been like to come to this abbey 800 years ago. You start to imagine what it would have been like to be on that pew with other people milling around, with other people entering the abbey, walking down into the abbey, people praying, people talking at those in the abbey. And after a little while, you stand up and continue exploring. And as you continue exploring, you go and check out the different bits of furniture that are all beginning to rot. But some bits of this abbey have managed to remain dry enough, with just enough roof and stonework around them. So despite 800 years, some bits have survived. And you look at some drawers, and you open the drawers carefully, and there isn't much in them. And you look in some cupboards, and you look in some wardrobes, and you look at some shelves, and you find a few ruined books just lying on the floor, some rotting away, some in better condition, that over the years have perhaps been knocked down or fallen onto the floor from shelves. And you go and take a look at some of the tables, and over at an altar, and you see that there isn't much of value here, and you didn't come here necessarily to find things of value, but you just notice there isn't much of value here. And you see a room at the back of the abbey, and this room seems a bit more substantial, a bit more kept together, and you notice it's because it's made just entirely out of stone, with the stone arching overhead, and what's in here is in better condition. And you sit on a seat in this room, picking up a book, flicking through the delicate pages. You then put that book down. You see a bookcase against a wall that has very few books in it now. And next to that you see a wardrobe. And you go and open the wardrobe. And as you do, you see that the back's missing, and that you can see daylight. You can see right through to outside into the valley. And you step through that wardrobe out into the valley, and you start wandering around in the valley, breathing in some of that fresh air. And you hear voices, and you're surprised because so few people have been here or come here. You didn't expect to hear voices, but you hear voices. And you don't think anything of it, you just think they're probably going to look around the ruins just like you just have. You just continue taking in that nice fresh air. And then you take a moment to sit yourself down on the hillside, just looking back at the ruins. And as you walk over and sit yourself down and turn around and look up at the ruins, you notice something strange. You notice that the ruins don't look like ruins anymore. The Abbey looks exactly as it would have looked 800 years earlier. And you think this must be some kind of a mistake or a hallucination. And you look away and you look back. And it does look exactly like it did 800 years earlier. And you can see the hole in the wall where that wardrobe is. As you walk back to the hole and you walk through the hole in the wall back into the Abbey and look around, and you can no longer hear voices, and you realise you're in the ruins. You walk back through the room out into the rest of the Abbey and you see you're definitely in the ruins. You can see the valley. You can see that there's very little of the Abbey left. And so you walk back through again and back into that room again. And you walk through the room, over to that wardrobe. And you walk through the wardrobe and the hole in the back of the wardrobe that leads out into the valley. And you can hear voices again. And you turn around and you can notice that the Abbey looks exactly as it did 800 years ago. And you realise that somehow you must have time travelled somehow. There's got to be something special about that wardrobe that's meant you've ended up back in the past, but you don't fully believe it. So you reach out and you touch your hand gently on the wall of the Abbey, and you can feel that white stone. You run your fingers along it. You run your fingers up it, higher than your head. You run your fingers down near the bottom. You walk along the length of the wall, running your fingers along that wall. You walk down the side, running your fingers down the next side. And as you do so, the voices are getting louder. You walk away from the Abbey a little way so that you can look back at it and take it all in. And you notice this definitely is a complete Abbey, just as if it had only just been completed. And you can see people milling around. And you walk up to the entrance, and the entrance is totally fixed and new. And you knock on the giant wooden door, and the door opens, and a young woman greets you and welcomes you to the Abbey. And as the door opens, so you can hear chanting and singing. And you can hear people walking around and the echo of footsteps. And you walk in, following the young woman. And you follow her as she guides you to the main area in the Abbey. And she guides you halfway down the pews, and you can see people sat in those pews. And she guides you halfway down the pews, and then gestures for you to walk further down and find somewhere to sit. And so you oblige, and you walk down, and you go and sit in the pews and take in the atmosphere. and you take a moment to lower your head and close your eyes. Just really take in the sounds around you. And while you're taking in the sounds around you, so you try to process the experience. Try to process what's going on, where you are, what time you are. You can hear others walking down and sitting into the pews. You can hear people standing up and walking off. And you think how odd it is that in what moments ago was just some ruins, there's all this life. And you're still trying to comprehend whether this is real or whether you're having some kind of hallucination. And you open your eyes and you stand up and you walk out from the pews and walk back down to the back of the room. And the young woman greets you and you ask if she'd be happy to show you round. And she says that she's happy to show you round. And she walks you round the outside of this room, and you recognize some of the furniture, although it's in much better condition now than when you checked it out moments ago. She walks you into one room, and you look around there, and then into another room. And then after a little while of exploring around the Abbey, she walks you to the room at the back of the Abbey, the one you walked into, that had that wardrobe that opened out to the valley. And she walks you into that room, and you see that the room's like a library. There's a chair in that room, a desk in that room, and then just bookcases around all the walls. And next to one of the bookcases is that wardrobe. And there's a table near one of the chairs. And she tells you this is where people come when they want to read about the knowledge and wisdom they've got to share here in this abbey. And so you find this fascinating, and she says she'll leave you to it. That she'll leave you to look around the books, and that if you need anything, you can always come and find her. And so you go and pick a book off the shelf, and you sit down and you start reading through it. And you look at how the writing is done, the ornate way that the first letter on each page is started. You see a year written in one of the books, and you realize this is about 800 years earlier. And then you look through another book and another book, and you find it fascinating. And you also find it fascinating that you're getting a chance to view these books, yet you know that if you are actually in the past, in the future, these books don't exist. Or if they do, you don't know where they are. There's just a few scattered books in the Abbey, most quite ruined, and some in slightly better condition. And yet here you are with thousands of books around you. Many of these books look very old, and yet you're 800 years into the past, so they're already very old compared to you. So you wonder what kind of knowledge is contained in these books. And you pick up another book and you start reading through that. You see information about herbs and spices and healing and well-being. You see books of prayers and meditations. Books on the uses of prayers and meditations for healing. You see religious texts. You see books that look like they're of songs to be sung. And books about the natural world. And you even see books about other distant places and what they're like and what cultures are like in those different places. And you only have time to be skimming through all these books because you want to get through as many as you can, just seeing what kinds of things are in them. And you wish to yourself that it was possible to carry all these books to your own time. But then you're aware that that would be stealing. And that you can't really justify carrying all these books to your own time. And so you continue looking through the different books, taking a few, flicking through them, admiring them, learning something from them, putting them back. Then you move a book to take it off the shelf. And instead of that book coming off the shelf, the whole shelf and the whole bookcase moves. The whole bookcase moves out towards you and then slides along the wall. And in its place is a dark, hidden room. And you can barely see inside it. All you can notice is that there are some steps leading down from where the bookcase opened, and that there's an archway. So you go and get yourself a candle off the table. You light the candle, you walk over to those steps, and you slowly walk down those steps into that room. And as you slowly walk down those steps and into that room, you notice the way the candle light flickers off the walls and off of items in the room. You notice how there's just a dim glow from the candle. And then you see that there's a couple of torches in this room. So you use the candle to light the torches, lightening up the room. And as you do, you notice that right in the middle of the room, is a stone table. And resting on that stone table is an ornate, ancient book. And you look at the cover of that ornate ancient book, and you notice it's encrusted with different stones and gems and gold, and made of leather, and that all of that wraps around the front, the spine and the back. And there are 2 locks holding the book shut. And so you open the locks and open the book, and you start looking through this book, and you assume it must be something important. And you start reading through this book, and you realize it's about a time long before now, long before this Abbey. It's about knowledge passed down for thousands of years. And it talks about something that those who have led to the people in this Abbey had placed something on an island just off the coast from here. And there were directions to that island in the form of an image hand drawn in this book that gave some clues and some marker points. But it didn't really specify what it was. That was on that island. And you keep reading through that book, trying to figure it out. And you learn a bit more about the island, about the size of the island, that no one really visits this island. It just has this one thing placed on the island, inside a chest. And this isn't hidden on the island. It's revered, and so it's placed in plain view for anyone who visits the island to see and kneel down and focus on healing and well-being while being in the presence of the chest. And you're unsure why people would go and kneel down and almost pray to a chest, although it isn't praying to the chest, it's just being in the presence of the chest while praying and channeling well-being. And so you take a moment to close the book and then leave this room, slide the bookcase back into place, leave that library, and then you leave the Abbey and you walk around the outside of the Abbey. And around the outside of the Abbey you go back to that entrance in time. You walk through that entrance, finding yourself back in present-day ruins. And you wonder whether that island is still there, and whether that chest is still on that island. And you know you've got to go and find out. So you decide to head back home for now, and you'll go and find out tomorrow. So you walk back through the valley. You think of that this is a weird experience you've had. You wonder whether anyone else will ever discover and open that wardrobe and realize it's a portal to the past. And she walked back through the valley, seeing a bird of prey circling overhead, seeing some rabbits up on the hillside, walking into the woodland, noticing how the temperature gets cooler as you head into the woods, and listening to that rustling of the trees in the breeze, and noticing the way the shards of light dance on the path in front of you. And you follow that path through the woods. Heading back to your car to head back home. And when you arrive home, you think about the experience that you've had. You think about the experience you're hopefully going to have tomorrow when you go to the coast, and you look on a map and you start doing some research. You start matching up the different landmarks that were mentioned on the maps in that abbey to work out where the island is. And you look at the new modern map and notice the amount that the sea level has risen and the tide has come in, and how the tide never goes out far enough now for any island to be off the coast. But you notice that there is some areas where the ground under the sea is higher than the surrounding areas, and you think that's likely to be where the island used to be. And you don't know what will still be on that location, but you form a plan for how tomorrow you're going to go there and you're going to search for that island, search for that chest, and see what's in that chest. And then you drift comfortably asleep while thinking about tomorrow. And in the morning, you awaken feeling energized and alert, and you head down to the coast. And you find yourself a boat to hire. And you have a plan for how you're going to do this. You start heading out to sea. You have to head a little way along the coast to find where it is you're going. And so as you journey along the coast, you can notice what the coastline looks like, and in your mind you're imagining what it must have looked like in the times when that abbey was active, when the water was much lower and this island was somewhere along here. And while you travel along the coast, so you follow the instructions and the map to look at when you're getting nearer to the location. And you feel lucky that the water's quite calm at the moment. You can gaze out over the sea and notice how the water is just gently passing by with comfortable rolling waves. And as those comfortable rolling waves pass under the boat, you watch them just heading off towards the shore. And you feel the boat moving ever so slightly as each wave passes. And you can smell the fresh sea air. And you recall how people are always telling you that the sea air has healing properties. And you can hear some seagull in the air as you continue to journey along the coast. And after some time journeying along the coast, you reach the coordinates for where the island should be. And you lower down an anchor and then go and get into some diving gear, ready to go diving down on that island. And you dive down under the water towards that island. And as you dive down, you can notice how clear the water is, and the sound of your bubbles as you breathe out comfortably and calmly, and the sound of breathing in, noticing that you can see the way the bubbles rise to the surface, noticing fish just swimming and going about their everyday life. As you lower yourself down further into the water towards that island, and as you get lower, so you begin to notice that there are signs that this was once an island. There's signs of the shapes of logs. There's some upright areas that look like trees that have been destroyed and are now tall stumps. And you start swimming among these. You notice that the ground is just very soft and easy to disturb as you swim over it. And that there's green seaweed coming off of old stumps. And so you continue exploring. You see what looks like a box or a little mound. And so you go over to that mound. You start brushing it away with your hand. And without much brushing needed, you notice that this is the chest. And it still seems to be intact. And so you brush all the silt off of the chest, brush all the sand away. And you notice the chest is too heavy for you to just carry straight to the surface. So you start dragging that chest along towards your boat. And you swim along, dragging the chest. until you reach your anchor. And you attach the chest to the anchor. And then swim back up to your boat. And at the surface, bobbing up and down in the water, you climb out of the water back onto your boat and raise up your anchor, raising up that chest, and you get the chest back onto your boat. You hose down that chest and notice that the chest is made of metal, quite thick metal that doesn't seem to have eroded. And that just by hosing it down made that chest glow and shine and look almost like new. And then you try to find a way of opening that chest, and you try to prise it open. And you realize it's totally sealed shut, almost like it had been welded shut. And so you had to figure out a way of getting into it. So you decide you're going to have to take it back home to work on the chest, to figure out what's inside. And so you drive your boat back to the shore, you head home. You take the chest into your workshop out the back of your house. Place the chest in the workshop and decide it's been a long day. You'll work on that chest in the morning. You have something to eat, and then you go to bed and you sleep so soundly. And then in the morning, you wake up, excited that today will be the day you get to look in that chest, see what is in that chest, and see whether it has any value, not necessarily financial value. It could be knowledge value. You want to see if it has any value. You want to see something that hasn't been seen for years. And so you go out into your workshop and you get a saw and you start trying to saw into the chest. And it doesn't work. And so you get another cutter and try to cut into the chest. And that doesn't work either. And eventually, you open the chest with the one thing it has spent 800 years being surrounded by. You get your powerful water jet, put it on the highest setting, and find that that seems to be able to cut through the chest. But at the same time, you don't want to ruin whatever's in the chest. So you know you're going to have to get it out very quick. And so you cut through the chest, you cut the top of the chest off. Turn off your powerful water jet. Slide the top of the chest off the back, and it falls to the floor with a thud. And you see that in this chest is a single large golden medallion. And you're glad there's no paper in here, given that you just used a water jet. And it's just a single heavy, large golden medallion. And on that medallion is writing and symbols. And with two hands you carefully pick that medallion out of the chest. You feel the weight of it. You see the brightness of it. You notice how it looks like it could have been made yesterday. You feel what that gold feels like under your fingers. And you start reading what it says on the medallion. And as you work out what it says, you notice why everyone had been coming here and seeing this medallion. Why everyone was coming and kneeling near the medallion in that chest. You notice it reads that it had been in that chest, placed in the chest, thousands of years earlier. It lists events at the point it was placed in the chest that you know had only happened thousands and thousands of years ago. And it doesn't say why it would have ended up related to that Abbey. But you realise why that Abbey was looking after it, and why no one had moved it, even when the island was drifting into obscurity and disappearing under the ocean, and why it was just forgotten in time, because it had spiritual significance. It was a connection between the physical and the spiritual world. Just like there are connections in time, there are connections between other things. And it's a timeless connection. And that the time portal you'd stepped through was a representation and a symbol of this medallion, and what this medallion is capable of when you get the right mindset. That this medallion connects all souls, past, present and future, and that by being in its presence, allowing yourself to fall into harmony with the medallion, that connection transcends time, connects you with your ancestors in the past, present and your relatives in the future, and with all beings. And you suddenly saw the significance of this medallion. And you knew that it needed to be kept somewhere. And it needed to remain available. That by having it available, it didn't just allow people who came and sought out its presence to connect with the past, present and future, and with relatives and loved ones on a spiritual level. As long as the medallion remains intact and looked after, it allows that to occur worldwide. And so you realize what you have to do. You place that medallion back in the chest. You weld the chest shut. And you drive off to those woods. And you wheel that chest through the woods towards that valley. And when you reach that valley, you head out to the ruins of the Abbey. You go beyond the ruins of the Abbey to the nearby cemetery that for hundreds of years was used by the Abbey. And you decide this is the best place to ensure the safety of hiding this chest, of making sure that no one gets hold of the chest, perhaps to just melt down the gold, to enable the spiritual life of all beings to continue, connected past, present and future. That for thousands of years this has continued to be the object that allows that connection. And you don't know how it works, and you don't have to know how it works. You just know that somehow this was created to allow humanity to have a connection, to have spirit and spiritual growth and spiritual connection to all things. And so out in the cemetery, you dig a hole deep down. You place that chest down there. And you cover it over, pat it all down, replace the grass. And then you go back to that abbey. You walk into the ruins of the abbey. You just want to have that feeling of what you've done, and to know if it's transcended time, made any difference. You have this feeling like somehow you were playing a part you were always meant to play. You just didn't know you were meant to play it. And you walk into the ruins of the abbey, and you go to that wardrobe, and you open the wardrobe, and you just see the back of the wardrobe, and you notice that that time portal has closed. That somehow, maybe being in this location, maybe because the people of this abbey were the last protectors of that chest, maybe somehow the chest is the thing that created the time portal, knowing more about you than you do, about your reaction to discovering its purpose, and that it needed to be moved to a more sacred place, to a place it would remain undisturbed, serving its purpose, when no one will come and worship it or bow down before it or anything like that, where it'll just serve its purpose to humanity for eternity, and you feel you played your part. So you travel home, knowing no one will know about it. You're not going to tell anyone about it. You just have this feeling inside you of positivity, of doing something right, with no desire for a reward or recognition. And you settle down for the night to go to bed with a clear mind, a clear conscience, and some clear rest as you comfortably relax, drift off asleep.